I want to start with a game, because it is one of the cleanest experiments ever run, and because you can feel it working on you in about 4 seconds. Pick a song everyone knows. Happy Birthday, an anthem, something so familiar it is almost stupid. Now tap out the rhythm on a table, just the rhythm, and have someone try to name it. And here is what will happen. To you, the tapper, it will sound obvious, almost insultingly obvious. You will tap it and think, how could anyone possibly miss this? And the person across the table will have no idea, none. They will guess something absurd, and you will be genuinely amazed that a person could hear that and not know. This was turned into an actual experiment. In 1990, a graduate student at Stanford built exactly this. Tappers, listeners, a table, famous songs, and she added one thing, one small thing, that turned a party trick into one of the most quietly devastating findings in the field. Before each round, she asked the tapper to predict. Guess the odds. What are the chances that your listener names this song? And across the tappers, the average prediction was about 1 in 2, 50%. A coin toss, which is already high, but you understand why they said it. To them, the song is right there. It is playing, loudly. How could half the room not catch it? Then she ran it. 120 songs tapped out, and the listeners got 3. 3 out of 120, 2.5%. The tappers thought 1 in 2. The truth was 1 in 40. And that gap between 50% and 2 is not a small error. It is one of the largest gaps between what we believe about ourselves and what is true that psychology has ever put a number on. And it is running, right now, in you. So what actually happens in the head of the tapper? Because this is the whole thing, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it anywhere. When you tap, you do not hear tapping. You cannot. In your head, the whole song is playing. The melody, the words, the arrangement, the voice of whoever sang it, all of it, in full. And the taps you make are just the tips of that. The places where the full, rich, orchestrated thing in your head happens to touch the table. But the listener does not get the song, they get the taps. That is all that crosses the table, a bare sequence of knocks. Someone described it as a kind of strange Morse code. No tune, no words, just hits and gaps. So there are 2 completely different experiences happening at one table. On one side, a full song. On the other, random knocking. And the tapper cannot feel the difference. That is the part that matters. Not that the gap exists, but that the tapper cannot feel it. From inside, it genuinely sounds like they are broadcasting the song. The richness in their own head floods the taps, and they hear it in the knocking, because they put it there. And now try to do the opposite. Try to tap the song and not hear it in your head. Try to hear only what the listener hears, the bare taps. You cannot. It is not possible. The knowledge of the song is not something you can put down for a moment to see around it. It plays whether you want it to or not, and that, exactly that, is happening every time you explain anything to anyone about anything you know and they do not. You are tapping, and in your head the full song is playing, the context, the background, the 10 things you know that make this obvious. And you cannot hear that you are only tapping. It sounds, from the inside, like you are being perfectly clear. That feeling of clarity is the single most misleading sensation in all of human communication. And we are going to take it apart. It has a name. And the name comes from an unexpected place. Not from psychology at first, but from economics. In 1989, 3 economists gave it a title that stuck. They called it the curse of knowledge. And they meant the word curse quite precisely, because economics had an assumption baked into it, that a person with more information could accurately imagine the judgment of a person with less, that you could set your extra knowledge aside and model the other mind cleanly. It sounds reasonable. It is the assumption you are running every time you say, well, if I were in their position. And these 3 showed, in experiment after experiment, that it is false. You cannot set the knowledge aside. Even when it costs you money to fail to, even when you are trying hard to think like the person who does not know, the information leaks, it colors everything. It will not get out of the way. And that was the finding that broke the clean assumption. More information is not always better. Sometimes it actively disables you from predicting someone who has less. And notice how upside down that is. We assume the expert is the best person to explain the thing. They know the most. Who better? But the curse says the opposite can be true. The more completely you know something, the more of the song is playing in your head, and the less able you are to hear how little of it is reaching the table. One writer, who thinks about language for a living, argues this is the single biggest cause of bad writing in the world. Not stupidity, not laziness, this. The expert writes down the taps and reads it back and hears the whole song because the song is in their head. And it reads to them as perfectly clear. So they publish it, and it lands on a reader who has only the taps. This is why the manual is impenetrable, why the professor lost you in week 1, why the brilliant person in your life is sometimes impossible to follow. None of them is failing to try. They are tapping and hearing a symphony. And underneath the curse, there is an older, deeper version of the same fault. Because so far we have been talking about knowing a thing other people do not. But the same machinery runs on time, on knowing how something turned out, and there it has a different name, one you have heard. Hindsight. Here is how it works. Something happens. An election, a crash, a relationship that ends. And the moment you know the outcome, it rearranges the past behind it. Suddenly the signs were all there. It was obvious. You could see it coming. The warning signals line up into a clean, straight road, leading exactly here. Of course it went this way. But go back to before. And it was not a road at all. It was an open field, a dozen directions, all equally live. The signals that now look obvious were buried in noise, pointing everywhere at once. And here is the cursed part. Once you know the outcome, you cannot get back to that field. You cannot unknow it. The knowledge burns the road into the landscape, and the field is gone forever, which makes you profoundly unfair to 2 people in particular. The first is your past self. You look back at a decision armed with everything you now know, and you cannot believe you did not see it. But the version of you who chose was standing in the field, not on the road. They did not have the outcome, and you are judging them for failing to know a thing that had not happened yet. And the second is anyone who acted before an outcome you now know, the person who made the call with the information they had that turned out wrong. You are marking their exam with the answer sheet in your hand and calling them foolish for not having it. And the researchers found the sharpest part of it decades ago. People do not even know it is happening. They cannot reconstruct their own earlier state of mind. Ask someone what they predicted before they knew, and they will sincerely report a memory that has already been edited by the answer. The field is gone for them too. They are standing on the road, certain they were always there. So let us bring this down to the ordinary day, because it is everywhere, and it is almost always misread as something else. Think about the last time someone did not get something that was obvious to you. The plan you laid out, that they kept asking questions about. The task you explained, that came back done wrong. And notice the word your mind reached for. Slow, not paying attention, a bit dim, difficult, because from where you stood, the song was playing, and they missed it. And that verdict feels like an observation about them. It is not. It is a reading you took off your own instrument while the curse was running. You heard the song, you assumed it crossed the table, it did not, and you have been on the other side of it constantly without connecting it. Every set of instructions that made no sense, every form you could not fill in, every help page that answered a question you did not have. Somebody wrote each of those and read it back, and it was clear to them. It was clear to them because they were tapping and the song was playing, and they could not hear the gaps you were about to fall into. It is why so many things in the world are subtly hard to use, not because the people who made them were careless, often the opposite. They cared enormously, and they knew the thing far too well. They had lived inside it so long, the song was deafening, and they genuinely could not hear how it sounded to someone arriving with nothing. And then the version that costs the most, because the curse gets worse the more you share with someone. The more history, the more context, the more you both already know. So the people you tap at hardest are the people closest to you. You leave half the sentence out because obviously they know the rest. You expect them to catch a mood from 3 taps. And when they do not, you reach for the worst sentence in the language of close relationships. You should have known. You should have known how I felt. You should have known what I meant. And sometimes that is fair, but very often you tapped. You played the whole symphony in your own head, the years, the context, the obviousness of it, and you sent 3 knocks across a table, and then you blamed them for not hearing a song that never left your skull. That is the curse of knowledge in the place it does the most damage. So here is the turn, and it is a genuine reversal of where you have been pointing. Every one of those situations feels like information about other people. The slow colleague, the reader who did not get it, the partner who missed the signal, and almost none of it is about them. It is about a specific thing your mind cannot do. It cannot build a clean model of a mind that is missing a piece of knowledge that your mind has. It keeps leaking the knowledge back in. So when you try to imagine what they know, you get your own knowledge, faintly grayed out, pretending to be theirs. It is not their mind, it is yours, wearing a costume. And that reframes the most important signal in the whole thing, the feeling of being clear. That warm certainty when you have explained something well and it is obviously landing. That feeling is not evidence. It has never been evidence. It is just the volume of the song in your own head. You feel clear because you can hear it, and you can hear it because you already know it. So hear this as plainly as it can be said. The clarity you feel is not the message getting through. It is the sound of your own knowledge playing in your head while you tap. And if you sit with that, it should unsettle you a little, because it means you have no internal alarm for this. None. There is no feeling that tells you you are only tapping right now. The feeling of being misunderstood has a signal. You feel the friction. But the feeling of misunderstanding someone else, of failing to reach them while certain you have, feels exactly like success. There is no difference from the inside. That is what makes it a curse, and not merely a mistake. Now, the honest part. because the obvious lesson here is dangerous, and I want to head it off. The obvious lesson is over-explain everything. Assume nobody knows anything. Spell out every step. And that is its own failure, and its own kind of insult. Nobody wants every obvious thing explained to them as though they were 5. Treat every listener as empty, and you have not beaten the curse. You have just swapped it for condescension. The fix was never more words. It is the right words, aimed at the actual gap, which means the skill is not explaining. It is diagnosis, working out which specific piece is missing and handing over that. And you cannot do that by guessing harder, because the guess is cursed. You can only do it by finding out, which we will get to. But first, the piece of evidence that tells you this is not a character flaw, because you might still be thinking, this is arrogance, experts being lazy, people not bothering. It is not. And we know that because it shows up in 3-year-olds. There is a classic test. A child watches someone hide a toy in one place, then leave. While they are gone, the toy is moved. And the child is asked, when that person comes back, where will they look? And young children say, where it actually is now, not where the person left it. They cannot hold that someone else knows less than they do. For years this was read as, they have no theory of other minds yet. But newer work found something quieter and stranger. Strip the curse of knowledge out of the task, reduce how loudly the child's own knowledge is playing, and 3-year-olds get it right, far more than we thought. Which means part of what that famous test was measuring was not the absence of understanding other minds, it was the curse, the same one running in you, present, before language is finished, before arrogance is even possible. And one more limit, so this does not become a way to dismiss everyone. The curse is real, it is not everything. Sometimes the plan actually was bad. Sometimes the other person actually is wrong. Sometimes the writing is clear and they did not read it. The curse does not mean you are always the problem. It means you cannot trust your feeling of clarity to tell you when you are. Those are very different claims. One is humility. The other is just a new way to be certain. So what do you do with a fault you cannot feel? And this is the honest, slightly humbling answer. You cannot fix it from the inside. There is no thinking harder your way out of this. Because the tool you would use to check your own sense of whether you are being clear is the exact tool that is broken. You cannot use the cursed instrument to detect the curse. So every real defense is external. The first one is a single change of habit. Stop predicting whether you were clear. Test it. The listener's face is the only real data in the room, the question that comes back, the thing they repeat to you slightly wrong. That is not an interruption to your explanation. That is the only instrument you have that is not cursed. The second, build the check into anything that matters. One real reader before you send the thing to 100. One person allowed to ask the dumb question and thanked for it, not corrected. Because the dumb question is never dumb. It is a direct readout of exactly where the taps stopped carrying the song. It is the most valuable sentence anyone can give you, and most people train the world around them to stop saying it. And the third is internal, but it is not a feeling. It is a question, kept in your pocket. For the exact moment you catch yourself thinking, how did they not get that? Swap it, every time, for what do I know that I am forgetting I know? Because that is always the real question, not what is wrong with them, but what is in your head so deep that you have stopped being able to see it as a thing that has to be said. And if you get even slightly better at this, At remembering that you are always, always tapping, something changes in how you treat people. The slow colleague becomes a person missing one piece you forgot to hand over. The person who should have known becomes someone you never actually told. And your own past self, stranded back in the open field, stops being an idiot and becomes what they always were, someone who did not yet know how it turned out. That last one is worth more than it sounds, because you tap at yourself too. You judge the person you were by the song you can hear now that they could not. Forgive them that. They were listening as hard as they could to a table full of knocks, with no way to know the tune. Same as everyone across every table you have ever sat at. All of us tapping in the dark, certain we are singing. See what people hide, even from themselves.